Thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening as well. This is the third part of the three-part series in Sefer Yona, leading up to Yom Noroim, where, of course, we read this as the Haftorah on Yom Kippur. We're going to fast forward today. Yona has been in the fish, davens in the fish, does tshuva in the fish, gets spit up by the fish, has another nevuah, actually goes to Nineveh. He tells the people they have to do tshuva. Some combination, like the Midrashim say, that the sailors who saw everything happen to Yonah came to Nineveh and told the people this man's for real. And the fact that the Melech of Nineveh was Paro Melech Mitzrayim all the way back from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, convinced the people to do tshuva, and they did a real tshuva, at least on the level of Goyim, a tshuva that was accepted to Hashem, as Yonah had predicted would happen. And therefore Yonah, despondent, goes outside of the city and sits down to wait to see what will happen, because it looks like Nineveh has been saved. And he is really upset. He's very, very upset, because this is exactly what he expected would happen, and now he's afraid everyone's going to call him a liar. Not only will the Jews call him a liar, but the entire world will now call him a liar. As he sits there, Hashem grows a kikayon, a tree of some sort, over him to shade him. This is something the Medrash points out was very necessary for a person who had spent some time in a fish. Exposure to the sun was very, very difficult for him. And then, after he felt so happy to have this kikayon, Hashem sent a worm to eat the roots of the kikayon, and the kikayon died, and Yonah was bereft of his protection from the sun. He is so frustrated at this point. He is so upset at this point, so angry, so sad, that despite the fact that we have a person who's a Navi, who we know is a tzaddik yisod olam, a tremendous individual, but the end of Sefer Yona leaves us on such a negative note. As it says in Perek Daled Pasuk Tes, Vayomer Elokim El Yona Hahetev Chor Lucha HaKikayon. You're so grieved over this kikayon. And Yonah says, Vayomer Hetev Chor Li Ad Maves. Yes, I'd rather be dead. I'm so upset about this. I'm so depressed. I'd rather be dead. Yonah had said it in the pasuk before, Tov Mosi Mechayu. It's better that I die than I live. He's so depressed. He's so upset. Says the Metzudas David, I will never get a nechama for what happened here until I die. And therefore we go to pasuk Yud Vayomer Hashem Ato chasto al hakikayon. You take pity. You care about this plant. Ashelo amaltabo, which you put no effort into growing. V'lo gidalto, you didn't raise it, you didn't plant it. You did nothing for it. Shebin lailo hoyu v'in lailo avad. You had it for one day, and now it's gone. And you care about it so much. Don't you understand? As the Navi concludes, in the very last pasuk, Va'ani, and I, Hashem, lo ochus al Nineveh yer hagadola. I should not have pity, I should not have mercy on this great city of Nineveh, asher yesh bo harbe mishtei esrei ribo odom, which has more than 120,000 people in it. Asher lo yoda, who do not know, ben yamino l'smolo, between their right and their left, uvehema rabba, and there are also a lot of animals there? Question mark. And that's the end of Sefer Yona, where Hashem gives him Musar. You care about a little plant, and I shouldn't care about all these people? You put nothing into this plant. You put no effort into it. Often, when people feel yogati, I put an effort, and then ovad, they lose it. It falls apart. They feel terrible. Children like to say it a lot. I worked so hard on it. I built this whole thing and one of my siblings came along and broke it, but I worked so hard on it. It's not right. It's not fair. And this plant was only around for a single day. How much of an attachment did he have? This is his favorite plant. He gave it a name. What kind of attachment? A young man, young lady meet each other for one date and they break up. No one calls that a breakup. It wasn't a good shidduch to begin with. No one's sad, no one's upset. People meet each other 10 times already and then there's a breakup. There's an emotional upheaval because there was a relationship. Yona had no relationship with this plant. It was a single day, so Hashem said, what are you so worried about? And I shouldn't take pity. I shouldn't look for a way out of destroying this big city of at least 120,000 people. And this is Bli Guzma. The Psukim told us earlier there were two pshatim in how big the city of Nineveh was. Either the city of Nineveh was in its circumference 3 days' walk. We consider a mil an 18-minute walk. That's a kilometer. 18 minutes. You figure out how many miles that would be for a 3-day walk. That's the smaller amount of the city of Nineveh. The larger amount, the Rishonim saying, interpreting the Psukim in the earlier parak, is 3 days in the diameter of the city. So, pi d is the circumference. So it's around 3 times 3. It's 9 days walk. That's a tremendously large city in those days. And the Midrashim talk about how there were many streets and how each street had many houses and each street went to main streets and there were this many main streets and this many shuks. It was a huge, huge city. The Radak explains the word quite literally, that there were harbe mishtem esri ribo adam. Adam means people, and he says it means men and women. But when Rashi looks at the words asher lo yada, who do not know, he says that that's referring to the children. There were 120,000 Adam asher lo yada ben yamino l'smolo. There were 120,000 children in the city. And Hashem ultimately showed Rahmanis to the city because of the children, who, Rashi says, don't know right from left. They don't know about Hashem. They worship idols because they were brought up that way. They don't realize when you are brought up in an environment where people do evil, you just think that's the norm. If it's normal to steal, as the people of Nineveh were doing, it was normal for the children to steal. Whatever are the norms of the society, the children just grow up in it. It's not their fault. They don't know ben yamino l'smolo. So Hashem says, I have pity on my creations. They don't recognize me. That's why they worship Avodah Zarah. It's not their fault. They don't get it. They just don't know. And it's interesting how the Rambam, in the beginning of Hilchos Avodas Kochavim, describes how Avodah Zarah came about in the first place. It was a similar type of tragedy. The Rambam says that at first, people looked into the sky. They saw the stars. They saw the moon. They saw the sun. They figured that's closer to heaven. Since Hashem, who they all believed in, Hashem put these things closer to Him, we should give them kavod. We should give them honor. Hashem is mechabed them. He's like their assistants. We should do that too. So people brought karbanos to the sun, to the moon, to give kavod to them, which they thought was really kavod to the master, to Hashem. But then came along the Nevi'ei Sheker, says the Rambam, false prophets, who knew how to make a profit off of being a false prophet, and they said that Hashem came to them in a dream and told them how to serve these idols. Do it like this, do it like that. That Hashem came to them and gave them a tzura, a picture of what the idol looks like. And therefore now on earth we can carve a stone that looks like a half a fish, a half a donkey, whatever this God is supposed to look like. But still, they believed that it all came from Hashem. Hashem was everything. These are just His assistants. But now they look like this and they're served like that, and Hashem told them how to do it and be rewarded for worshiping them in this way. It took the next step, which may have happened over the course of decades or even centuries, where the Nevi'ei Sheker started to say, the idol came to me and told me how it should be worshipped. And finally, after decades and centuries, people forgot that there was a Hashem. Because already they've been practicing this type of avodah zarah for quite some time. Their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. No one was talking about Hashem anymore. The Nevi'ei Sheker were already saying that we hear these things from the idols themselves. And they forgot that Hashem was ever involved. This is how the Rambam describes what happened, starting with Enosh, with the grandson of Adam Harishon. And this is the reason why people are worshiping idols all the way up to the story of Noach and the Teva. In other words, it's a mass tinok shenishma. These people didn't mean it. It's just they were brought up that way. And as the generations passed, they simply forgot. Such people existed in Nineveh as well, said Hashem. These were the people, the Adam Ashal Yada Ben Yamino L'Smolo. These were children. And therefore they deserve to be forgiven. They deserve not to be punished. Once they repented from Gazel, which is described in the previous prokim, the Ben Adam L'Chavero, and they accepted the basic Shiva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the societal needs. Hashem said they're fine now, because they were never with malicious intent. So here, you Yona, you're crying like a baby over the Kikayan. And here, all these people were saved. Continues the Ibn Ezra along these lines, that the city was huge. The 120,000 who didn't sin were most probably the children. And I thought it was interesting that there is a contrast between Sodom and Nineveh. By Sodom, they were not saved. Perhaps there were children. Maybe Sodom should have been saved for the sake of all the children. And yet we know the Medrash says they couldn't even find 10 people. Even the children were so corrupt. How come this reason that's given for Nineveh was not applied to Sodom? Perhaps we can answer it with a pshat that I once heard about the Mishnah that says, Ha'omer shali shali v'shalach shalach beinani. One who says what's mine is mine and what's yours is a regular person. V'yesh omrim, others say, zu midas Sodom. That's the way of Sodom. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. That's Sodom. There are those who say pshat. V'yesh omrim doesn't mean, and there's another opinion, which is typically the way it means. It means as follows. Ha'omer, if one person says, shali, shali, v'shalach, shalach, that's a regular person. But if it's v'yesh omrim, if it's many people who are saying it, if it's the whole city who's saying it, the whole society who's saying, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. I never give you anything of mine, you never give me anything of yours. Each of us are isolated in our own universe within a society. If that's the hashkafa of an entire society, zu midas Sodom. That's considered midas Sodom. For an individual, it's not the worst hashkafa. But if the whole society is that way, no one cares about anyone else, they only care about themselves, that's midas Sodom. Sodom was so greedy, they probably had very few children. They didn't even want to give things to their children. Shali, shali, shalach, shalach. I don't want to have a shalach. Why should I give anything to the children? In my shiurim on Megillas Esther, we find that Nebuchadnezzar was the same way. Nebuchadnezzar was so rich. He had conquered so much of the world. He had 1,080 storehouses. And before he died, he put all of his treasure onto boats and sank them in the river so that his own son, Evel Merodach, wouldn't be able to get any of his treasures. It's mine and only mine. Shali, shali, shalach, shalach. When you have an attitude of greediness like that, you don't even care about your children. You don't even have children. That wasn't the way it was in Nineveh. Nineveh, the people stole for themselves, for their families. They were interested in their families. They had families. They had children. It wasn't that they were greedy with this hashkafa of what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. They simply liked to have more, but they shared it with their own families. They had families. They were willing to pass on to their families. And therefore Nineveh was able to be saved, because Nineveh had these 120,000 children who just grew up with this hashkafa that there's an avodah zarah and there's no real Hashem and stealing is normal. But they existed. The children existed. And therefore it was possible to save Nineveh, according to these Mefarshim, simply for the children. So Hashem tells Yona, your anger doesn't make sense. It's not justified. You care so much about the Kikayon that you did nothing for. But I, Hashem, I have to care. There's a massive loss of life of my creations. Jews, however, are held to a higher level. We can be punished, we can be destroyed for sins because we should have known better. The people of Nineveh didn't know better. For sure the children didn't know better. But we have the Torah, we have the instruction book. We have to know better. Because that's the way it is for the Jewish people. Says the Malbim, we stood at Har Sinai. We have to have emunah. A guy, a behemah, that's what Rashi says. Equal, not that the guy is a behemah, but a guy and a behemah, the same. They just don't know. They just don't know. It's not their fault. So therefore Nineveh could be spared because of the innocent children. There is a little bit of a chilik, a difference between the situation with the Kikayon and the situation for Nineveh. You could try to make Yona look not as bad as what Hashem accused him of. The Kikayon did something for Yona. It protected him. What did Nineveh do for Hashem? In other words, Yona has the right perhaps to be upset because I didn't do anything for the Kikayon, but the Kikayon protected me, even for a day. So I lost something that it was doing for me. What did Nineveh do positive for Hashem? Maybe that's why Yona was upset. So perhaps the answer is that there really is a comparison, because the simple existence of people in the world does give something to Hashem. The existence of 7 billion people is aegis to the glory of Hashem. The fact that people exist, in a certain sense, is a kiddush Hashem. Until they do evil, until they deny Hashem. But simply people existing is a good thing. It means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a world that has so many people and the diversity. As we know, just like no two people look alike, no two people think alike. Everybody's different. The amazing view of creation, where you see so many things so different from each other, and it all comes from one source, it all comes from Hashem, is aidus to all those people. It's testimony to the godless, to the greatness of Hashem. So in the end, why was Nineveh saved? The people did tshuva. Hashem had mercy on the innocent babies. He had mercy on his creations. Tov Hashem lakol, v'racham of al kol masov. Hashem has mercy on the people. You can't fully compare the people of Nineveh to the Kikayon, where the Kikayon never did any sins, and the people of Nineveh did. But the comparison between the two is shaykh because they're both Hashem's creation. And we have to take that into consideration in these types of situations. The loss of Hashem's creation is something that you can compare to the loss of the Kikayon. But nevertheless, Hashem says to Yona, you shouldn't be complaining. I have some people to worry about. It's interesting how Sefer Yona then finishes with a question. But the Medrash and the Yalkut Shimoni answers the question. It says there's one more step to the story. Yona responded. Hashem said to him, shouldn't I care about all these people? Yona said, V'osa Shah, at that moment, Nofal al Ponov, he fell on his face. V'omar, and he said to Hashem, Hanhag olamcha v'midas rachamim, continue to guide and lead your world with this midah of mercy, of allowing people to do tshuva. The concept of tshuva is one of Rahmanis. If you go with pure din, you did something wrong, you have to get punished. There's no way of getting out of that by regretting what you did and saying, I'll do better next time. That's the midas harachim of Hashem. It says, Yona, God, you're right. Keep leading your world with midas harachim. As the pasuk says in Daniel, La Hashem Elokeinu harachim v'haslichos. So Yona says, Hashem, you're right. Keep it up. The world needs this. That's a very nice and almost happy ending. Yona took the tochacha, he took the musar, and he says, Hashem, you're right. That's the way to run the world. You don't need my haskama, but thank you. You're having rahmanas on people, and that's what we really need to run a world. But Sefer Yona doesn't end that way. It ends with a question. It's an interesting dichotomy that we know that Yona answered, but the Navi itself does not express the answer. Why does it do that? Why does the Navi end off with the question? I once heard of a study that was done by an individual whose name was Zygarnik. It was carried out mostly by his students, some sort of a professor. He noted that when he went to a restaurant, the waiter or waitress was able to write, without writing down, was able to take the orders of 10 or 12 people at the table, keep it all in his or her head, go into the back room, to the kitchen, and come out and give the exact dish to each person as they had ordered. However, after that was done, if you followed the waiter or waitress out of the room and asked, by the way, who got which thing? They had no recollection whatsoever. And he theorized that when a person has a question that bears on their mind, who gets which plate, that creates a certain tension in their mind that enables their memory to be sharp and clear. But as soon as an answer is given to that question, they forget the answer and they forget the question. The whole thing is gone. Only while the tension of the question exists does it stay on the mind. That's the reason why cliffhangers are very powerful, because that ending of what's going to happen stays in a person's mind. A Rebbe ends a shiur with a kasha. The boys go home that day with something to think about. But if the Rebbe had a kasha and a brilliant answer, the boys leave the room. There's no answer. There's no kasha. My notes know it, but I don't. But when you have the kasha and you think about that, you take it home for a day or two, then it's something that sticks with you. So the Navi, perhaps along these lines of this effect that was noted amongst people that exists, perhaps the Navi tells us the same idea, that when you ask the question, you have Rahmanis for a plant, and you don't have Rahmanis for all these people? Don't you realize the beauty of having Rahmanis for all these people? Yona's answer is, you're right, I do. But it's better if you leave it as a kasha. As we finish Mincha on the afternoon of Yom Kippur, it's better to leave it as a kasha. Don't you realize Hashem said, I have to take care of all these people? It gives hope to all the people in the room who are about to go into Mincha, then into Ne'ilah. Yes, Hashem has Rahmanis on us. Hashem wants us to do tshuva. Let me end with one final question on Sefer Yona. The postscript question. Once Yona ran away, why did Hashem feel that he needed to send Yona? Why didn't he just find another Navi? There were other Naviim. Yona ran away. Why make Nisim to ensure that Yona finishes the mission? We have what I like to call the law of conservation of miracles. Hashem does not make miracles unless they're necessary. You know, with Noach, the Ramban says in Parashas Noach, why did Noach have to build the teva? It's all Nisim anyway. Why doesn't Hashem just take 2 of each animal and bring them up to Shemayim for a year? Bring Noach and his family up to Shemayim for a year. You have to build a teva? The answer is the law of conservation of miracles. You build something. You build a boat. You get the animals in there. You bring food. You make it as natural looking as it can. Can't do more than that. You're still going to need Nisim. But the law of conservation of miracles. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu not send another Navi? He had to make Nisim to keep Yona in the picture. Answers Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, Sichas Musar Tov Reish Lamed Aleph, Maimer Chav Tes. Yona was a special person. Besides being a regular Navi, which alone was special, he was willing to forego his closeness to Hashem. He was willing to forego his nevuah by running away. And Reb Chaim Shmulevitz learns differently than we learned 2 weeks ago, where we said that Yona's running away. It's like a radio station. He's too far from the transmission. Reb Chaim Shmulevitz learned even more than that. If you are further away from the center point by the Beis HaMikdash, it's not just weaker reception on your part. You are on a lower madrega in Chutz La'aretz, therefore you're not a good receiver. You're lower. It's not just you're further from Hashem and the reception is harder. You're not in that madrega. Yona was willing to put himself on a lower madrega. He was willing to be tortured, Mesiras Nefesh, inside the dog. He was willing to give up his life to be thrown overboard out of his love for who? For Klal Yisrael. As Chazal said, his whole point was to prevent Klal Yisrael from having worse punishment after Nineveh would do tshuva and Klal Yisrael would not do tshuva. That was his overt thought, whatever other little parts we put into it. His overt thought was to save Klal Yisrael. Such an individual, he's the best Navi. He's the best leader. He cares so much about the people. He's like Moshe Rabbeinu who says, Hargeini no harov. He says to Hashem, if you can find a better leader, kill me. Put someone else in my place. I care so much about Klal Yisrael. If I'm not good enough, take me out of the picture. That made Moshe the best leader, not like politicians today. They want to lead. Right. They want a position. That's what they want. They want to win. That's what they want. You sometimes have to wonder how much they really care about the people. If they really thought there was somebody else who was better for the people than them, would they not run? No. I am the best. They all think they're the best. That's not the way that Moshe Rabbeinu thought. That's not the way that Yona thought. And that brought Yona to an even higher level. He was simply the greatest Navi of the time. And therefore, he had to be given the most important nevuah of the time. One from which Klal Yisrael could learn from the idea of tshuva for Nineveh and the idea that Yonah himself did tshuva. He was the best one, says Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, to fulfill the mission. And therefore, Sefer Yona is left to us to teach us many lessons about tshuva that we as Klal Yisrael can learn from. After all, that's where we started. That the Gemara in Megillah and Daf Yudalid says that there were many, many Nevi'im in Klal Yisrael. Twice as many as people who left Mitzrayim. But we only have 48 men and 7 women whose Nevuah was recorded. Because they're speaking to us. Those are the Nevuos that through the generations will affect us the most. And that's Sefer Yona. It's about tshuva. It's about the Midas HaRachman of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But perhaps most of all, it's about a leader who is a person who loves Klal Yisrael even more than he loves himself. These are the lessons of Sefer Yona. I want to wish everyone a Ksiva Chesima Tova, a good Gebench Diyar, and Be'ez Hashem, we'll see in January if we can have some shiurim in terms of Shovavim. That's going to be the goal. Maybe some for men, maybe some for women. We'll see what we can do. Till then.